Hey there, Vicky. Hope you don't mind. I'm just gonna call you Vicky for the sake of answering you here on video, so it can be public. I can respect your anonymity. But Vicky, you're kind of a friend of a friend. We've crossed paths through Facebook, but I don't know you so well. But I really appreciate you messaging me with this question about you feeling called into the ministry and what that means. You kind of wrote in your message that you feel called into the ministry. You've had other people give you words about this, and you've even had a dream. You've read some things on my blog. You're wondering about my perspective on what you say is women pastors, and what I would say to you as a pastor about your call into the ministry. Thank you for asking me. You're going to get a ton of different opinions on this. I mean, they're going to be all over the place. There are books and books written, oceans of ink have been spilled. I'm just going to, a couple of points. First of all, I don't know you particularly well, but I want to say I affirm your call into the ministry in as much as I know. I fully believe and support that God has given you a gift, that He's calling you to use it, that He wants your life to be fruitful and bless others. Having said that, from the little I gather from your Facebook page, you are in an Anglican church. You're in the Church of England. And that means something very different where you're at than where I'm at. You're in a type of church where they have, if I can use a big word, an Episcopal ecclesiology. And so you have kind of priests, archdeacons, bishops, archbishops, and a whole church hierarchy there that in our understanding of what church and full-time ministry is and leadership, it doesn't have those things. We're congregationalists. For us, the ultimate authority isn't a bishop or an archbishop, but it's within the congregation. You guys have a very strong doctrine of ordination, of the setting apart and the differentiation of the work of a priest and the laying on of hands and what it means to be ordained. We don't have that. And so I'm going to answer your question, but it's going to be in the context of a congregationalist. And more important than my views on women pastors or anything would be my ecclesiology, because the way you even answer these questions are completely different based on your view of what church hierarchy is supposed to look like. So in our congregation, we put a lot of emphasis on the priesthood of all believers. That every single believer is called to the ministry, that every single believer is called to be a priest. And so when someone comes to me, whether male or female, in my congregation, I know, and if I know they love Jesus, then I affirm their call in the ministry, and it's my goal as their pastor to help them find them. In fact, it's not just my job, it's the job of the whole church to help people find out their calling and work into the ministry. In our setting, the highest office is not the office of elder or deacon. The highest office is the office of church member, and everyone has an ownership and a right and a responsibility to use their gifts for the glory of God. Within the way you worded your letter, there was an assumption that to be an elder, so I'm one of 3 elders. I happen to be the only one on staff full time. The other 2 are volunteer elders. I'm full time, and a lot of people call me pastor, but the 3 of us hold the same office. We're all elders. That's not seen as a gift. That's not seen as a calling. That's just seen as a particular office for the time being. For example, my calling into the ministry when it came when I was a teenager, and I felt God speak to me to share His good news, to share the gospel with people, and to teach the Bible. And I have been doing that. So I'm in my 30s now, my mid-30s. I've been doing that with all my heart for the last 20 years now. That sounds like a long time. You might think I'm pretty old then. So for 20 years, I have been trying to share the gospel with people, opening up my home, talking to people in any and every possible way to try to do that. I've been trying to teach the Bible through all sorts of means. And so this was my call into the ministry 20 years ago, and I've been doing that call and exercising those gifts. It was only a year ago, this week, that I actually became a pastor. And you know what? That's a temporary office. where you're coming from in the Church of England, there's this laying on of hands and people are kind of transformed into a priest and there's this ontological change. We don't have that. And so in our church, in your background, only the priest can administer the sacraments. Only they can give communion. Only they can baptize people. In our church, anyone can serve communion. Male, female, doesn't matter. They don't have to be an elder, don't have to be a deacon. They can baptize people. And so you don't have to be an elder to use certain gifts. Our elders, the three of us, aren't necessarily the best teachers. We're not necessarily the best leaders. There may be other people in the congregation that has stronger giftings than that. Eldership is just seen as a particular area of responsibility. We're sort of like seen as the fathers of the church, just giving oversight and affirmation to everybody else using their gifts. Deacon in our context is seen as very different, and that's open to both men and women, because that's more not so much a thing of fatherly oversight. That is more about gifting. And so we have women deacons who help lead ministries that evangelize, that share the gospel. Some of our most fruitful work right now is by some of our women leaders in our church doing outreach into the community. And they are called by God, they're gifted by God, and equipped by God. And we affirm all that. So I don't know if this is answering your question. I hope this is beginning to answer your question. I affirm your gift. My call to you would be, one, consider your ecclesiology. Study your Bible, and be in whatever sort of church you believe the Bible speaks of. If you read the Bible closely and love the Bible and study the Bible, and that leads you to more of an Anglican ecclesiology and the idea of this separate ordination that's just for priests, okay, go for it. There have been many godly people in that system that I read and I love, and they're wonderful. But if you read it and come to the conclusion I have about more of a Congregationalist church, that'll affect how that answers your question very, very differently. I think I do understand. So in our setting, only qualified men can be elders. But an elder in our setting is very different from a priest in your setting. In your setting, if I were to believe that only men can be priests, that would mean there's a certain man that can do quite a number of things that none of the women can do, and 97% of the men can't do, because those 90% of men aren't ordained. And chances are they couldn't be ordained. Maybe they'd apply to be ordained but get turned down by a panel, and so they would never be able to baptize, or they would never be able to serve communion, or this or that, or all the other things the priest can do. It's just not a thing in our context. So from everything I read, once again, I don't know you that well, but if you love Jesus, if you really want to serve him, then absolutely, you're called in ministry. Find out what those gifts are. Just don't mistake your call and your giftings for a particular office. I've only been a pastor for a year, but I've been exercising my call for 20 years. I could stop being a pastor in 3 years' time. Maybe I'm only a pastor for 5 years, and then I go on to do something else. I was working for a charity working with immigrants before this. I might go back to that, but you know what? My call to share the gospel with the lost and teach the Bible will be with me till the day I die, even if I'm only a church elder and pastor for 5 years. So don't mistake, well, I have to go to seminary, I have to get a degree, I have to become either a priest or a pastor or whatever in order to, your calling and your giftings with you. Start using it now. And if God gives you a particular office of deacon or this or that, or to exercise it, great, but those sorts of things come and go. Just follow what God has given you for now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking me. If you have any more questions, please do not hesitate to message me, and live an active life. Be fruitful for the kingdom. We need you. We need young women like you to be very active, using their gifts to destroy the gates of hell and to advance the cause of Christ in this world. Hear from you soon. Bye-bye.